Locavore horticulturist Barbara Damrosch is an expert in the field of organic and sustainable homegrown seasonal food. She runs a successful market garden with her husband, Elliot Coleman, with whom she wrote the award-winning book, The Four Seasons Farm Gardener's Cookbook, published in 2013, and hosted a series on the Learning Channel titled Gardening Naturally, which ran from 1993 to 2003. She also wrote a weekly column, A Cook's Garden, in Washington Post from 2003 to 2017, which is still available on Post's site. Her latest is A Life in the Garden, Tales and Tips for Growing Food in Every Season, published by Timber Press in October 2024. I read the hardcover. It is approximately 370 pages long. People familiar with her work may find contents of the book repetitive. For me, of course, and for other budding and amateur gardeners, she and this book is all new, and I love both. So don't judge this book by its dull, uninspired and generic-looking cover image, which features a bench under an apple tree with shrubs all around. These hold a special place in the author's heart. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Nur al-Huda, and you're listening to my review of Barbara Damrosch's Life in the Garden. Here's an overview. First off, she talks about her lived experience. Barbara Damrosch catalogues the work needed to keep veggies, fruits and herbs in shape and lists all the varieties that she has tried. She is careful in reminding readers that this is her lived experience as a Maine farmer, dictated entirely by the weather and climate conditions of Maine, which consists of mostly winter and short summers, and food that can be grown in those Maine-specific conditions. This is the reason why she gives no advice on lemons, even though she did grow them once to fruition in a semi-heated greenhouse and cares for orphan citrus plants left by others. But yes, no chapter on lemons. It does not suit Maine's climate. To the average reader, this may seem like a limitation on the book's usefulness. However, I contend that since she's been doing it for more than 50 years, and the produce given here are generally grown in similar seasons all over the world, so her being a Maine resident should not limit the help you seek and will get from this book. And I actually learnt a lot from this book. Apart from the romance of growing something with your own hands, tending for it, caring for it, and being patient with it, I learned a lot about crop rotation, about storage, and how to plant different vegetables. She believes that gardening is an excellent way to harness kids to positive ambition, as opposed to the anxiety and depression-laden teenage years, bereft with harmful social media, bullies, gun and drug culture, and an aimless existence. Quote, "The best way to guarantee a nationwide garden literacy is to teach it in school." Unquote. Another revolutionary idea that she believes in is building community gardens in urban spaces. This has power to reshape modern architectural landscapes and greenbelts across streets and highways. She encourages readers to try out varieties from around the world, grown in climates that mimic their own. She imbues a sensual, earthy, and immersive experience in preparing, growing, and cooking organic food that reminded me of words Nigella Lawson used to mouth when describing the cooking process. With the vast amount of knowledge that she has in trying out different varieties of the same vegetable or fruit or herb, she also puts everything in the historical context. For example, on page 308, this is how she describes the taste of the fennel seeds that she has tried in her life. Quote, "It's been 200 years since Thomas Jefferson's American consul in Florence, Italy, Thomas Appleton, sent him some fennel to plant at Monticello. Jefferson did, and the crop has thrived over here in peaceful obscurity ever since. In California, where the climate is something like the plant's native Mediterranean region, it has naturalized and is not unusual in cuisine. Easterners have taken longer to embrace it." I tasted my first fennel as a child in an Italian neighbor's garden. It looked like a stalk of celery with a licorice flavor, but a mild one, not the strong, cloying taste of licorice candy or the potent thrust of liquors such as ouzo, pernod, and anisette. Many years later, I ate a fennel salad in an Italian restaurant that was milder still, almost as subtle as the licorice hint you get in chervil or tarragon. This fennel had been sliced thin, doused with good olive oil, paired with oranges, and topped with curls of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. I was hooked." Unquote. She also shows humility. She quotes from books by other experts, showing a sense of humility and connectedness that other farm-owning authors don't. Part 5 is huge. In fact, it is more than half of the book. Each of the chapters in Part 5, that runs from pages 188 to 316, discusses one frequently used vegetable, fruit, and herb at length, the requirements for their successful growth, such as temperature, beds and frames, planting and harvesting, and how she cooks and stores each.
First the farmer sows his seed, then he stands and takes his ease. He stamps his foot and claps his hands and turns around to view his lands.
There's one on tomatoes of various varieties. On page 190, she writes, "It's a spring day in our greenhouse and the Pointer sisters are belting out 'I'm so excited' as the young potted tomato plants raise their branches up toward the sun. Elliot and I dance around them, lifting our arms to the beat. It's a joyous ritual, our ridiculous salute to new growth." Unquote. This is the kind of detail that readers are likely to get regarding different vegetables, fruits, and herbs in this book. She writes on pages 228 to 229, quote, "Lazy gardeners consider chard their one true friend. Plant it now and you will harvest it for many months, as it is less apt to bolt than summer spinach or lettuce. Rosalind Creasy's red rib types, multicolored chards such as Bright Lights, a collection of old strains reselected and strengthened for greater dependability by breeder John Eaton in New Zealand, and Johnny's selected seeds in Maine. There are also varieties with only yellow ribs. Mixtures are often referred to as rainbow chard. For a more delicate leaf, some gourmets favor the Euro-style narrow-stem types like perpetual spinach and herbet, both available from the cook's garden. Personally, if I were to grow only one, it would be good old Ford Hook, developed in the 1930s by Burpee. It's a foolproof plant, good at any stage from salad leaf petite to palm frond huge." Unquote. One of the cons that I can think of in the book is that she mentions and does not give advice on the kinds of natural organic pesticides one can use for various plant and fruit diseases. Instead, she mentions hand removal technique to get rid of some pests. For example, on page 197, she gives her method for beating or getting rid of tomato hornworms. Now, tomato hornworms are famous for their hard-to-detect green color, which is same as the stems and leaves of the tomato plant. And she says that one way to beat tomato hornworms' defense, quote, "is to go out at night with a black light. That gizmo we used to view psychedelic art with back in the 60s. Medical pathologists use it to illuminate certain viruses and bacteria. Policemen use it to detect bodily fluids and counterfeit bills. And you can use it to light up the bioluminescence in a tomato worm." Unquote. A very hands-on approach indeed. There are helpful suggestions on the GMO-free heirloom seed companies and catalogs that she has tried. Now you can either look at it as cynical promotion or wisdom of a woman who gets her hands dirty for a living and knows what works. I think she's just trying to be helpful. Then there are the recipes. All of her cooking suggestions start and end with olive oil and garlic, which means that her cooking suggestions are too simple to be a recipe. But maybe she wants the average fast food eating consumer to realize that real, nutritious, well-balanced meal doesn't need that much cooking time either. So why not opt for it? Quote, one day I found one of our workers, Mi Young, yanking up the red root pigweed after quitting time. It turned out she was picking it for supper. With sesame oil, garlic, chopped scallions, and miso paste, she said. When shepherd's purse, Capsella bursa pastoris, dotted our farm with its pesky little rosettes, Mi Young gave it a similar treatment, but added rice, vinegar, sugar, and chili powder. Plantain leaves too tough for salads she tamed with blanching. They are a seasonal treat in Korea, her home country. Unquote. On pages 186 to 187 she writes, quote, I picked and nibbled a few leaves from the Galansaga forest taking root in some recently emptied beds. It wasn't strong, bitter, or hot. Strangely, it had almost no flavor at all. Still, I'd resolved to prepare a reasonably authentic ayako. So I set about simmering some chicken, potatoes, corn, onions, garlic, and Galansaga in rich homemade stock. Because the dish is ordinarily served with an array of garnishes, avocado, diced hot peppers, capers, cilantro, and sour cream, I set those out too in little bowls and summoned the farm crew to the table. We loved this one-pot meal. We devoured it. Unquote. However, the potluck way of life, where neighbors and friends and other farmers bring their own homegrown cooked food and raw veggies, feels forced and isolationist to me because they are joined together by food they grow 24/7, not good company or conversation. However, she wants the reader to get involved in gardening as a necessity, not a luxury or hobby. Quote, one of the most limiting factors of our country's garden culture is that it's a popular summer pastime, not a life support system. Unquote. It's a way of life, and there's a way to include it in your life. As she successfully shows, even if you're not selling potatoes and doing fancy landscaping projects like she does. It's hard not to pick up a shovel after reading it. You can check out the Amazon link to the book as well as the text of this review on Goodreads site. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.